let's get this thing rolling.
Okay.
So I have a question for you tonight. I want to talk about small business funding. So
It's a good topic.
I've seen quite a few different examples of this in my day. But where I don't come from the financial background like you do, I have some questions, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how do startups and small businesses get funded in the first place? And then if they want to expand or if they want to, I guess expand covers it, right? So there's always
you just introduced 6 episodes right there.
Nice.
There is
There we go.
So
We're doing a series.
much content. And
Well, but it's like I've seen the examples like you're scraping money together from your uncles and your cousins and whatever.
friends, family, and fools. That's what I like to say.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so true. There's the classic way of going out and acquiring small business debt if you can, I suppose.
Sure.
Because not everybody can.
Sure.
I don't know. Those can't be the only 2 options, right? And I have seen a few others, but for the sake of time and not that I'm known for being concise, but I'm turning over a new leaf.
For attempting.
Yeah, there you go.
For a good effort.
Is there a smart way to do this, right? Is there a smarter way to go get funding?
Can I'm going to change the terminology from a smart way to do this to a real way to do this.
Okay.
There's so much out there that is hype. It's reality TV. It's internet buzz.
Oh yeah.
And sure, that those things do happen, but
Right.
they don't happen consistently. They don't happen for the 97.5% of entrepreneurs who are out there running a business day to day. Like there's a lot of showy, sexy businesses that, everyone's like, oh, that's a cool tech startup. And sure, that happens. It's exciting. It gets a little bit of hype. It gets a little notoriety. And everyone's trying to be the next Mark Zuckerberg.
Right.
But in reality, like, there are 100 million small businesses in the United States that, they're turning wrenches. They're doing the books for other companies.
They sell their car. I've seen literally somebody sell their car and take to just riding their bike everywhere to start up their small business.
Yeah. And so I want to get real. And so I'm going to break this into 2 things. The principles are the exact same, but there are 2 stages that are really important. The one is the startup stage, and the other is the expansion stage of the small business.
Okay.
And when I say small business, like if you are under, maybe 10 million in sales, you're still going to fall in that category of small business.
Yeah.
It seems like a lot, it's like, oh, whoa, a $10 million company. That's awesome. It is awesome. Congratulations to you.
Yeah. If you've made it that far, pat yourself on the back. Holy crap.
But you're still operating like a small business. You still deal with most of the struggles. You're in kind of a higher tier. You've got some different things, but you're still operating like a small business. So the first thing that I want to talk about is when small businesses go to get money, they start kind of like doing this exploration, like, oh, okay, I can go here, I can go here, they like dabble in a bunch of things. And they find out very quickly that it's hard to get money unless you want to put your own personal assets up, and sometimes entrepreneurs don't have a ton of personal assets to put up.
Right.
So here's a tricky spot. If you're young, you usually don't have a lot of assets. You just haven't had time to accumulate assets. Maybe you're still paying off some student loans.
Sure.
You just barely got into a house and it's killing you. Like you
had
don't
your first kid.
Yeah, you don't have a lot of assets when you're young. When you're old, you've got a lot of assets, and you really don't want to risk those because you need those because you might get into a fixed income.
Yeah.
If you're in your 50s And you're looking at that retirement that you've built up, and you're like, oh, I've got $1 million saved away. I'm like, that's not much. I'm sorry. It sounds cool, but in reality, if you've got to live off of $1 million for 20 years with some potential major medical, that's not a lot, and you shouldn't be dumping $500,000 into a risky venture that you're going to lose on. And well, I'm sounding so negative here for a second. That you could lose on, and so there's this idea of, man, where am I going to go to get money? And we alluded to the friends, family, fools. People start wanting to get other people involved. Hey, invest in this.
Oh yeah.
And it's fraught with their issues. I see friendships broken up, relationships broken up.
Oh my gosh.
Don't borrow money from grandma.
Yeah.
Just
we're such good friends. He would never break my heart. Like, I'm totally going to give him all this money.
Right.
He will.
Yeah.
Sorry. It happens. I've seen that happen often. And that's what I'm getting at, is like, I've seen things like that happen. I've seen things like that go south. And I don't know, to me, a lot of that isn't worth it. I mean, a small business, start having your own company and your own startup or your own small business, especially when it comes into something, when it matures and, comes of age kind of a thing, it's incredible, and it's absolutely worth pursuing, and it's absolutely like getting some skin taken off of your back for, right?
Yeah.
But there are just some things in life that are like, man, I don't know if I would have risked that.
Yeah.
For me personally, right?
Right.
And so that's where the question really comes from, is like,
let's get into a couple things.
Okay.
So I'm going to start off with this logic, and that is that debt is expensive on the front end, cheap on the back end.
Right.
Equity is cheap on the front end, expensive on the back end.
Oh, yeah.
And so whether you're looking at debt or whether you're looking at equity, and we are going to talk a little bit about, the grant money, the crowdfunding money, the free money, as it were.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that, but I really want to stick with kind of debt and equity, because these are the traditional forms of money. These are a lot more realistic. And again, I want to keep this episode real.
Well, so before maybe we want to wait. Like, I've seen crowdfunding work.
It can,
right?
And it has its place.
And it does have its place. I guess what I'm trying to get at is, like, I've seen crowdfunding work. To me, that's more plausible or more feasible than getting grant money. I feel like everybody and their dog is like, oh, I'll just get a grant, or I've got this grant out there, I just need to write this whatever proposal. I mean, it happens.
If there's a global pandemic, you might get some grant money.
Yeah. But regular day-to-day grants take a long time.
They're hard to come by. If you're a startup, it's almost impossible. You have to have some history.
And are you really going to split your time between trying to get a grant and making your business get on its feet?
Most entrepreneurs that I've seen that chase grants, the amount of time and energy that goes into chasing those grants, they don't come out ahead.
Well, and that's what I'm saying. It never gets off the ground.
You start hiring grant writers. And I've seen people get ripped off.
Oh, yeah.
Like they get on the internet and they're just like, oh, wow, free grant money. And then they start paying for services that are not legit. And, and I'm like, it's a dicey space.
Yeah.
Don't do anything. If you're going to do grants, go through the government. That's where grants are going to be. But honestly, I'm not a huge fan of the grants. Like,
I'm not either.
I don't think that they're in the best interest of most entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
And when I say most, I'm talking like 99.2%.
No, I agree. With that completely made up statistic, but I agree.
No, actual.
Right. Yeah. Fake news. But so crowdfunding though, where I have a hard time personally with this free money concept.
Right.
I don't know, man. Like, I don't know. It's just
So
I don't know if I can identify, but I have.
Let me give
some
you some
feelings that I'm
information
like,
that's not made up.
Okay.
So I had the opportunity to spend a couple days with. He was a CEO of a crowdfunding platform.
Yeah.
And it was cool because we were hanging out together, and I got to ask him all sorts of questions, and he was asking me questions because he came from a very different small business world than my background.
Yeah.
And it was super interesting to kind of compare. But I asked him, I'm like, on a crowdfund, I'm like, what's a successful crowdfund? And he's like, most people on our platform, $5,000 up, we're calling it a success. Like if you cleared $5,000 on your crowdfund, we're calling it a success.
Yeah, that's huge.
And I thought, I'm like, dude, $5,000, like that's not going to do anything for your business. And what he said is he's like, this is what it does. The money, sure. But if you can get, because to do $5,000 on a crowdfund, you've got a couple hundred people that they just voted for your business. They're just like, hey, we think this is pretty cool. And you validated that there is a market
research.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's, so he looked at it and he's like, yeah, some of these, and he's like, not all of them, stop at 5,000. It's not uncommon to hit $50,000 on a crowdfund. It's not uncommon to not get off the ground, but he's like these ones that are like 3 million and that kind of stuff. He's like, they happen, but don't plan. That's not a strategy. That's luck, know. And he's like, plan something. $5,000 to $50,000 is a great space to be in, especially if you're fresh out of the gate trying to do this.
Well, and that's what I was going to say is like, I have this problem with the free money side of it. And it makes me sound like I'm against crowdfunding. I'm actually not. I actually really like crowdfunding.
Sure, yeah, me too.
Because of that aspect that you just spoke to, the market research side of it. In order to do, and I'm going to qualify this because you've got to do it properly. From my perspective, to be worth it, or for me emotionally to be on board. Not that you need my buy-in, but whatever.
I do.
I'm super important.
Right.
For me, though, you've got to do, in order to do it right, you've got to do so much work. You've already have to have so much legwork done.
Sure.
In order to nail this sucker, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the crowdfunding is just furthering your market research. It's just an extension of all these things that you're already doing, like you said, to validate what you're doing.
Yeah.
And bonus, you get some money. You know what I mean?
That might have covered the work that went into.
Doubtful. It might have covered one person's contribution, so you didn't have to give up a little bit of equity.
I mean, crowdfunding, you got to have high quality videos put together. You've got to have a solid social campaign put together. I mean,
if you don't have a physical product, you've got to have some solid video to back that up.
Yeah, and there's a lot of work that goes into it. But I don't want to get hung up on the free money. I actually really want to talk the debt and equity side of things.
I'm done with that.
Okay,
I'll leave it alone.
Because this is where the vast majority of entrepreneurs are really going to reside, is on the debt and equity side of getting some capital to do their business.
Right.
Let's talk debt first. So debt means that you're borrowing money. You have a loan, whether that comes from a bank, whether you max out your credit cards, whether you go to your uncle and
you're paying it back.
Yeah, you're paying it back. And, with debt, a lot of entrepreneurs, especially in the startup phase, they're just like, oh yeah, I don't want to do debt. Or it's kind of like this badge of honor to be like, oh yeah, I have no debt in my company. And I'm like, there's nothing wrong with debt in a company so long as you're not, one, over leveraged,
right,
and two, you're getting a bigger return than you're paying in interest.
Yeah.
If I'm paying 10% interest and I'm getting an 8% return, well, that's bad debt.
That was,
even if I'm not over leveraged, that's bad debt because I'm the wrong side of that equation.
For sure.
But if I'm borrowing at 12%, but I'm getting 25% return, or if I'm borrowing at 20% and I'm getting 50% return, that's good debt, And so most entrepreneurs don't realize that when you start putting debt into your business, it's on your personal credit. Like people are borrowing money to or they're lending money to you, not to the business.
Right.
And
well, especially if you're a startup, you don't have anything to
you got
act
nothing.
as collateral, and they're not just going to be like, hey, I love in the movie The Greatest Showman, where he's like, I have this whole, I don't remember exact terminology, but he's like, I've got this entire fleet of ships. It's at the bottom of the South China Sea, but
right.
I have the deeds. It's freaking awesome.
And
I'm not condoning illegal financial activity here.
I don't know that was completely illegal. It was fraudulent. I guess that makes it illegal.
Exactly.
Okay.
White collar crime. Hanging out with Martha Stewart.
Ooh, snap.
Spicy.
So when you're looking at debt, you're putting collateral up. And one of the things that I want to point out is the banks, they kind of consider you a startup if you've been in business 2 years or less. This is a rule of thumb. Your bank might deviate from this a little bit, but as a general rule, they're saying 2 years or less, you're still a startup. And typically, if they deviate from that rule, it's not in your favor. It's like, some banks are going to say 3 years or less. They're still considering you a startup.
Because of the risk involved.
Sure. Yeah. And so they're not validating anything that you've done. I've seen this where, a company, they'll hit the ground running, and in the first 6 months, they're seeing some pretty solid growth. And they go to the bank, and they're just like, okay, I need a loan. And the bank won't give it to them. And they're just like, I've got all this growth. And I'm like, sorry, it's 6 months.
Yeah.
That could be a fluke.
Yeah.
Like
could just be a flare up.
Yeah. You don't have enough track record for the bank to really get excited. And by the way, when I use the term bank, credit union and bank, I'm going to throw those in.
Financial institution that's going to give you money.
Yes. and so, when you're going to get money, when you're borrowing money, banks, credit unions, they're a great way to go, but it's going against your personal credit. Like you're putting your house on the line, you're putting your, your savings, your retirement, any other investments, assets that you have, vehicles, all this kind of stuff. I've seen a lot of people that they have gone to get a loan and they don't recognize the fact that I'm like, your house is now tied up to your risky business.
Yeah.
Right. So are you sure you want to go down that road?
Yeah. So you're not selling me on the idea of debt. It's not like, that's the right answer. That's definitely what I'm going to start recommending.
Here's the thing. Debt, you got to pay debt back.
All right.
And I personally, I don't like getting into debt on something that I'm like, it may or may not work.
Yeah.
The best laid plans still have a bit of risk and luck associated with them.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And so, I get a little nervous when I'm looking at debt and I'm thinking, okay, if my business flops, can I still pay this back? Now,
yeah, because that's the thing, right? Like you're still stuck with that.
Right. And if you've been in business for an amount of time and you have a history and you have clientele and everything, I'm a lot more open to debt at that stage. Or I should say I'm open to larger amounts of debt. I don't have any problem. If you want to do a small little $5,000, $10,000, get you going, great. Do it because, if you can pay that back, that's fine. But
yeah, that's the key though. If you can pay it back.
Yeah.
If you're like completely bootstrapped, if you're completely strapped in your personal finances.
And pulling yourself up by your bootstraps.
Yes. If you're like barely scraping by paycheck to paycheck.
Don't do it.
A $10,000 loan could crush you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And financial institutions know this. That's why they don't lend when they look at it and they're just like, sorry, you're high risk.
That's not to say you shouldn't be an entrepreneur.
Right.
You absolutely should continue.
Right.
Just find a better way for you.
Let's talk equity for a second.
Okay.
The idea of equity is ownership. And this is something to keep in mind. Shark Tank. I love Shark Tank.
I know. That's why I brought it up. Sorry.
On the record, not a fan of Shark Tank. There we go. It's out
fine.
there.
It's
Okay. I said it.
We still love you.
Thank you. So equity means ownership.
Yeah.
And ownership means decision making.
Yeah, exactly. And that, to me, that's the bigger thing than, hey, they're going to be taking some percentage of the money or whatever. They also get to decide what happens in your business.
Right. So
So
it's their business now.
yeah. So if they get to sit idly by and not do anything, but then, 10 years deep into it, be like, hey, actually, this is what needs to happen.
Yeah.
And that's even if you don't give them majority,
So-
the 51%.
Majority. Like at the first I said, I'm like, oh, we could do 6 episodes on this. You could do a full episode on just understanding the nuances in equity, the majority share, the decision-making process, what happens when you start with equity. You've got 2 partners and then it's like, oh, okay, we're going to be 60-40. And then you bring on the third partner. Is it now 60-20-20 or did it go 40-40-20?
No, it's just 60-40-40. Everybody knows that.
Oh, okay. That's I did my math wrong and I'm making this too complicated.
Yeah, you mathed wrong. Duh.
But there's a lot that goes into it. We're not going to cover that in this episode because I don't want to get overly technical. But
Clearly, my math is totally on point for that topic at the
Clearly.
moment.
But if you're going to start structuring equity, take some time. If you're not familiar with it, get someone who is. Sit down with someone who is familiar with structuring these kind of deals, even if you think it's a small deal. Even if you're like, oh, I only gave them 5%.
Yeah. So my big thing there is, and I'm not a financial guru, like by any means, right?
Sure.
But
you're
but
a
I
little
understand
bit
it
more
well
on
enough.
board with how entrepreneurs are. Like your strong suit is marketing,
yeah.
and here you are making financial decisions.
Yeah. So, but here's the thing with that. Like, if you are a startup entrepreneur, small business owner, say you are at $10 million, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you're in negotiations with somebody for equity in your company, you better be able to, I don't care at what stage this is. This could be day one of your entrepreneurial adventure in life. But if you're about to give up percentage of equity to somebody in your small business, you better understand what that's worth.
Yeah.
And I'm not
Long term.
Yeah, exactly. And you better be able to estimate that out, like you're saying, right? And there are ways to find that out. If you haven't done that homework, you absolutely shouldn't even be considering giving away equity.
Mm-hmm.
That is the dumbest thing of all time.
Right. Yeah. I love what you're talking about with understanding the far-reaching consequences of giving away that equity.
Yeah.
If you're going to give away too much equity, then, do you know what this is? And it's not that hard. Run a calculation, figure out what 5% is going to be, figure out what the, what 10% is going to be, 3%. Just kind of run with it and run some different scenarios. It's not, it's not rocket science to figure this out, but it's so important that you do take the time and run these calculations. But I want to talk about the management side of the equity again, because we kind of glossed over that. And it's
for sure.
so important to understand the decision-making process, because there are the negative consequences there with the decision-making process where, they can influence decisions that you might not want in your business.
Okay.
But there's the positive side of what if I actually want this person and their expertise? What if they can help grow my business in a way that I can't?
Yeah.
And I see a lot of business owners that they're in business for several years and they're kind of afraid to bring someone on. And I'm like, that's a great time to bring someone on. Bring them on, give them a share, but bring them on for their expertise.
Yeah, because to me that helps ensure more of a commitment, right? Mm-hmm. I think a lot of people could take that as well. Then they just get their share and then they get out. Well, sure. you could put that stipulation in a contract or whatever if you need to.
Right.
But if somebody's willing to take a share rather than higher wage, to me, that's like, hey, I'm committed to this. I really think I can make this happen. And if that person really is worth their weight in salt, then you just possibly did something fantastic for your small business.
Yeah.
Because without that person, you can keep going on the track that you were going on, and you wouldn't be paying them as much or at all or whatever. But you also have the potential to not be nearly making as much as you could,
right,
or doing as well as you could.
Right.
So
I want to have one final thought.
Okay.
That is, now this is my own style, and there are other entrepreneurs and coaches that have a different style. This is my style. You were talking about the debt, and you're just like, oh, you're making this sound awful. And I'm like, well, I don't put debt or equity. I don't put one above the other. In my book, they're both bad because they're hard to come by, and what I mean when I say they're both bad is they both have their cons.
Sure. Oh, for sure.
And, look at it and say, do I really need the money? Yeah. Because I see a lot of entrepreneurs that they're just like, I need $100,000. I'm like, okay, what are you going to do with that $100,000? Spell it out exactly. Look at what you need. And, there's so much opportunity to trim the fat. And that's what I mean by they're both bad, is you come in and you just get money for the sake of having money.
Oh, okay.
It's smart to say, okay, how do I trim the fat?
Yeah.
But once you trim the fat, then go above and beyond. It's like, when you go to buy a car and the sticker says $30,000, you better have $40,000 to buy that car.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it doesn't cost $30,000. It's like, oh, wait, there's sales tax. Oh, wait, there's registration. Mm-hmm. Oh, I got to accessorize this thing. It's a brand new car, so now I want to take it to the car wash. I want to get it detailed, and I want all these things are starting to add up. And so that $30,000 is a $40,000 purchase.
Sure.
And it's the same thing with your business. If I think I need $100,000 and the bank says, well, I'm only going to loan you 80, don't get the 80 and then go to your best friend and get another 20 and be like, oh, okay, we're good. Because you're stretched thin. You have no room for error, and you're going to make mistakes because,
it happens all the time.
It happens
I don't care how good you are.
Yeah, and even if you've been in business for several years, you're still going to make mistakes. Yeah. Don't run it to the wire.
Yeah.
And so
that's good advice.
Try and limit how much debt and how much equity you're grabbing until you've proven the concept. Once you've proven the concept, go big, man. Like if you've got a concept that works, go big. But until you've proven that concept, keep it small, keep it tight, trim the fat, run lean. That's my style.
No, I like that a lot. And I'm really glad that you went there, because I'm not gonna lie, I was kind of like, this isn't really answering my question in a good way, because it's like I know about debt and I know about equity, right? And I know they're pitfalls, but I guess I had never thought about it in that light, right? Like if you need to grow, or if you need some sort of infusion, right? It doesn't it doesn't necessarily have to be capital in a direct form, I guess.
Right.
Where you're trimming fat, it's kind of an indirect form of capital. So, and even an entrepreneur that's just starting out can do that, right? Mm-hmm. Like it's like if you're looking for all this grant money, if you're splitting your time looking for grant money and working on your small business, and you're like, I got to have some funding, stop looking for grant writing and start focusing more of your time on your small business. And that'll infuse your business, right? Because that's really the ultimate thing. So
there's so much that we could cover in this, and we'll do some follow-up episodes on this.
I feel like I opened up more cans of worms than I was intending to, but
so look for some follow-up episodes that we're going to get into some of these details that we didn't have the time to on this one, but we hope that you enjoyed something, that you had some good takeaways.
For sure.
Please let us know what your thoughts are. You can go ahead and reach us at www.marketingmanagementmoney.com or Twitter at MMM Small Biz. That's MMM Small BIZ. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks for joining us.